A few years back, when I was 17 years old, I went to a party. Everything was alright until the host started getting really intense and creepy. By that point, it was around 3 a.m., and I was pretty drunk. I decided to call an Uber in order to avoid any advances from the insistent guy. The Uber shows up, and I try to sober up when I get in. The driver starts making small talk with me, and in the state I was in, I failed to see the red flags. He starts to ask me about the party I was at, and I told him about the creep, and then he told me it was because I was short and cute. He then asked my age, and sensing a weird vibe from him, I told him I was a minor, thinking that would deter any further advances, but it turns out that was a horrible idea. He was driving pretty recklessly on the highway, and I snapped out of my drunken stupor real fast. He then asked me to get drinks with him that same night, and told me he really liked me. I quickly told him I'd get grounded if I stayed out any later, and that my mom was awake and waiting for me at home. Keep in mind, I live in Mexico, and the amount of people, and especially women, that get murdered daily is ridiculously high. When we got to my home address, I noticed the doors were locked, and he kept on insisting on us going to get a drink, even though by now it was almost 4 a.m. I tried to act as nice as possible when I told him that I couldn't that night. He then asked for my phone number and told me we could go out the next day. So, not being the first time that some creep had asked me for my number, I gave him my number, but I changed to the last digit so he couldn't actually contact me. But then, he actually dialed the phone number as I was getting out of the car. Of course, my phone didn't ring, and he started getting agitated and said I gave him the wrong number. I played drunk and stupid and recited my number again, but actually said it correctly in order for him to think he heard the last number wrong. He chuckled and said it was his bad and told me we'd see each other the next day. I made my way into my house and immediately woke my mom up because I was terrified. She managed to calm me down and told me to go to sleep, so I went into my room and started putting my pajamas on when I heard my phone ringing. The Uber driver was trying to video call me, and I lost my shit when I saw that on my screen. I immediately denied the call and then noticed he'd sent me about 15 messages asking what time he could come pick me up and why I wasn't replying. Of course, I blocked him right away and thought that would be the end of it. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number and checked the picture and saw it was the driver. He asked me why I'd blocked him and started spamming me. I immediately blocked him. Over the course of the next month, I'd get messages from random phone numbers, and it quickly became obvious that it was the driver. I would always block him, but eventually I reported him on the Uber app and I changed my number. The only problem is, he knows where I live. This happened over 20 years ago. I was driving back home with my girlfriend at the time. It was Christmas Eve, and my mother's family used to hold a large celebration at my aunt's house in Estacada. This was my girlfriend's first time meeting with my extended family, but she got on quite well with them. We spent the majority of the afternoon and evening talking, playing poker, opening presents, and drinking an assortment of adult beverages. My girlfriend had been quite inebriated by the time we had to leave, therefore I'd be driving us home. It was around 11 p.m. or so. I was driving my girlfriend's car along Highway 211. Now, this stretch of road is surrounded by farms and dense patches of forest, and parts of it are unlit. But nothing to fear. I grew up in this area, so I knew this road like the back of my hand. The both of us were just driving and talking away, just two young lovers making the most of our moment together. There is a portion of the highway that descends down an enormous hill before crossing Deep Creek. Surrounding both sides of the road are thick forests. There are no lights. The only thing we could see was the area directly in front of our headlights. I drove down the hill, crossed the bridge, and uphill through more forest, It's as the highway starts to flatten out that it happens. Something sprints across the road so suddenly that I almost hit whatever it was. I slam on the brakes. I turn to my girlfriend and ask her if she saw it. She confirmed that she had, but she couldn't make out what it was. Maybe it was a coyote, as they are a fairly common sight in this area, but something felt off about it. Whatever it was that ran in front of the car disappeared into the woods next to the road. Coyotes don't usually just dart out in front of cars, not like that anyway. So for some reason, I decided to check it out. I turn the car around and switch on the high beams to light up the forest better, in which this thing had vanished in. I step out of the car and walk towards the woods. I don't see anything, but now it feels like perhaps I'd made a grave error. My heart is pounding, and the hairs on the back of my neck are standing at full attention, but I still don't see anything unusual in the trees. Suddenly, the car's horn blasts. It's not a regular beep that you'd get if, say, your driver or passenger wanted you to hurry up and get in the car. No, this was a long, blaring beep. I walk back into the car and ask my girlfriend why she leaned on the horn like that. She said nothing. Instead, she pointed to a spot about 50 feet from where I was standing. I looked over in that direction, and that's when I saw it. Surely this was the thing that ran in front of our car. It was a man. He was completely naked. His skin was covered in dirt and mud, and in one of his hands he was holding a hatchet. He looked back at us, and then he smiled and waved to us just before turning around and walking back into the forest. Needless to say, we got the hell out of there. Once we were safely driving again, my girlfriend explained what had just happened. While I was trying to look for the man in the area he initially vanished in, he circled back around and came out from another spot in the forest, beyond my car headlights. My girlfriend had seen something out of the corner of her eye, and that's when she saw him. Before she honked the horn, he was walking towards me, with his hatchet raised, as if he was going to strike me. We called the authorities once we got safely back home, but they never found anybody, or they did and just didn't tell us. But the officer we spoke to explained his theory. The man was obviously looking to ambush unsuspecting lone travelers, for only Lord knows what reason. We all agreed that my girlfriend's quick thinking saved my life, as it let my potential killer know that I wasn't alone out there. I moved back into the area recently, so I now drive that highway often. No naked hatchet man sightings yet, but I can tell you that I'm definitely extra vigilant now, especially near Deep Creek. I'm a 21-year-old female, and this story took place when I was around 11. I remember this day clearly, because it was the first time I was ever allowed to walk to school and back by myself. Up until the age of 14, I lived in what we thought was a safe place in Chautauqua County, New York. Everyone knew everyone. If you thought you would get away with something, then be prepared to have your ear abused by the time you got home. There was this one day, though. It was a cold winter day, and school unfortunately was still open. So all the neighborhood kids had to walk through knee-high inches of snow just to get to school. It took me longer to leave the house, as I was used to walking with my older sister to school since she knew the routes better than me. I always used to make fun of her for being paranoid and taking a different route every day from school. But after that day, I learned that was what saved my life. As I was waiting by the door to leave, my mom came up to me and told me that I should ride with her to drop me off because my sister was too sick to go today. Being a brat, I made a big deal about walking by myself because I was almost 12 years old and all my friends' parents let them walk alone. She looked at me for a long while, then told me to make sure I pay attention to cars. I got hit by a car and almost died when I was 9, so the worry that showed on her face was well warranted. I hurriedly nodded and head out the door to go to school. My sister didn't like to dilly-dally, so she was always in a rush to get to school early, but seeing as it was just me, I thought it would be a good idea to take my time. I would play in the brown slush that was left on the side of the road, and even made funny looking snowballs to see how far I can throw them. Halfway to school, I noticed a white van following behind me. Being the playful child I was, if I had not been bending down to make another snowball, I wouldn't have noticed it slowly creeping up the street. I told myself I was being stupid, but continued more hurriedly to school. Once I got to school, I took a quick glance over my shoulder and saw the van a few feet behind me. It wasn't until I was on school grounds that it drove away fast by me. I thought that would be the end of it, but throughout the day, when I would stare out the window, the van would be there. I assumed that it never really left, just parked. Many adults would try to convince me years later that maybe it wasn't the same one, but I knew it was. This van had a bright yellow smile emoji sticker on it. I couldn't see who was in the van, but through the tinted glass, I knew they could see me. It was now the end of the day, and I wasn't ready to go home. It was too late to call my mom, because she was at work, and my sister was home sick. I had to suck it up and start walking home. I tried to blend in with a group of kids, but most of them were car riders, and the others didn't live near me. Remembering what my sister told me, I took another route home. I didn't memorize this route clearly, but I decided anything was better than being spotted by that van. I made it to my main street, but realized my mistake was too late. The route I took led back to the main street where I walked to school. Hidden behind a row of cars was the white van with the smiley emoji sticker. I tried to stay calm and walk past it, but once I heard the van door silently click open, I ran. I could hear the rush of 2 pairs of heavy footsteps fall behind me. They were getting closer, so I did what any normal kid would do. I cut corners. I cut into someone's backyard until my house was directly in sight, and forced myself into the thick snow to make it to the door. My sister looked confused, but one look at my face and she pulled me inside and locked the doors. The van was still outside. Truthfully, it stayed out there until my brother got home. Me and my sister don't talk about it, but we both knew how close it was to me going missing. I hadn't thought about this incident in years, but one of my hometown friends showed me an article that came out in 2013. Apparently, some men kidnapped and sexually assaulted a girl my age. It wouldn't have scared me if it hadn't mentioned the white van. Whoever you are that attempted to kidnap me, and do God knows what else, let's not meet. This happened some years ago. I was around 20. I was going on a road trip of some sort with a really good friend of mine and his family. Our destination was a concert in a country next to ours, but we would be stopping at night to sleep in the camper we drove in. We hadn't crossed the border yet when we stopped at the first campsite for the night. Now it seemed like a pretty family-friendly and safe place, so none of us had our guards up or anything. That night, at about 11 p.m. or so, while my friend and his family were getting ready for bed, I went outside to get some fresh air. Our camper was almost completely next to the beach, so I went down to the shore to dip my feet and get some much-needed quiet time by myself. On the way there, I passed by a beach shack, a detail that will be important later. As I stood there, letting the waves lap over my feet, I noticed the silhouette of a man further down the beach, but it was a public space for campers, so I didn't think much of it. After being absorbed by splashing in the water with my feet and enjoying the moonlight, I decided to make my way back. Of course, it was very dark given the late hour, but I don't scare easily. No, as a woman in the modern world, I usually do stay on my guard after dark, but that thought never occurred to me since I felt I was in a safe environment so close to the campsite. Anyways, as I was walking back, I noticed that the silhouette of the man further down the beach was gone. But even more worrying was the fact that as I was nearing the beach shack, I saw that someone seemed to be trying to hide from my view behind it. Immediately, I was on alert and called a friend I knew would be awake. I gave the shack a wide distance while talking loudly to my friend about how she was coming to meet me. After not too long, I got safely back to the campsite and hopped in bed in the caravan. I didn't tell my friend or his family because even though I was scared, there could have been many logical, non-threatening answers to what I saw. I put it out of mind and the rest of the trip went off without a hitch. About a year or so later, I was talking to my friend about the trip and suddenly remembered the creepy experience. As I told him, he slowly got pale though, and told me something his brother had told him and his family over breakfast some months after the trip. That same night after I had gotten back and gone to bed, his brother had gotten up late at night to get some water. But when he passed the window, right by his bed, he saw a man standing right there outside looking in the window. As soon as he was seen, the man left, but it definitely creeped out the brother a lot. But just like me, he seemed to put it out of his mind. Now with both of those stories, it definitely doesn't seem far-fetched that the man hiding by the beach shack had followed me back. I really am scared to think about what would have happened if I had been alone. This happened a few years ago in my old one-person flat. I had a strange feeling that something wasn't right for a few days. Like, I was sure that food in the fridge was less than I put back the last time. I found pillows from my couch on the floor, stuff like that. I lived alone back then, so there wasn't anyone else with access to my flat, or so I thought. Well, one night, I woke up around 1 in the morning, sweating, and even though I didn't remember, I was sure I woke up from a nightmare. Since I was drenched in sweat, I decided to take a shower. So I put my phone up in the bathroom for music, turned on the water, and enjoyed my shower. A few minutes in, I heard the door move. I never close it, but it still never moves. I took a look at the shower curtain and saw a shadow against it. I took a look at my phone, which confirmed someone was there since I could see a reflection in my screen that showed someone standing next to the shower curtain. It took me a lot not to scream and to keep acting like I didn't notice anything, while silently taking the shower head off and turning the water all the way to the hottest. I am still kinda impressed of that quick thinking. Our water got really hot when you cranked it all the way, and a few seconds later, steam was rising and the water hurt my feet flowing to the drain. I turned around, ripped the shower curtain open, and held the shower head right at the person behind. It was a woman. She screamed in pain. I whacked her in the face with the shower head and jumped out of the shower and ran to the door, taking the key out of the lock and locking it closed behind me. A little later, she started to bang on the door, but the door didn't give. I called the cops and went to the kitchen to get my big kitchen knife, just for safety. I felt like my throat was closing up when I saw it was missing and realized there's only one place where it could possibly be right now. The police came and arrested the woman. She turned out to have been the former person living in the flat and was evicted after not paying rent. It seems she made a copy of the key and came into the flat when I was at work and sometimes at night. It's possible that what woke me up in the first place was her. And honestly, I don't even want to think about it. I found the knife later in the bathroom, so she definitely brought it with her, and either the police disarmed her, or she dropped it herself at any point. Ever since then, I always insist that the locks are changed when I move into a new place.